I think if panelists should be prepared for a photograph first, so we can have it for the communication department of the ADB, and it implies that you give permission to ADB to use that photograph if it is okay with you. So photographer, please line us up. Well, thank you for being here. I know it is a end of the day. It is difficult to keep the energy level. I myself started this morning at about 8 o'clock. So I had to figure out how to keep my energy up. And I think all the 19 cups of coffee I had will keep me awake. I think if I feel nervous, it's the coffee, it's not me. Now, many of you may have been at the accountability session here during the civil society program. And many of you, and there have been several panels on it, and you would have heard from various civil society organizations in Asia and Pacific who are citing incidents of how a failure to engage communities effectively has created many grievances and harms to social, environment, and ecological harms. Our session is essentially taking it from there, and we'll talk about how to engage communities effectively so that the problems like that are minimized. So we will be first hearing from Ani. Raise your hand, please. She is our youth representative, a student, and very much involved in the climate change, adaptation, and mitigation dialogue by participating in the COP meetings for several years. She will talk about how the ADB, her understanding of how ADB wants to put people in the center of its work. Because after all, as many ADB speakers have said, the goal of ADB work is to make lives better for people. So what are the policies ADB has to put people in the center of its work? Two policies. One is stakeholder engagement policy, which is part of the environment and social framework being launched just today and will become effective from January 2026. And a new civil society approach paper, which has been developed and launched by the ADB this year under the leadership of Mr. Bruno Carrasco, the Director General of the Sustainable and Climate Change Department at the ADB. It's the other way around, Climate Change and Sustainable Development Department at the ADB. We are very grateful to have him here. And towards the end of our presentations, he will share reactions and comments from the ADB perspective. After Ani, we will hear from Samira, and each of the speakers will tell you about what organization they belong and what work they do. But Samira will be presenting the successful implementation of community participatory monitoring and community engagement in 7 South Asian countries using a network of more than 600 civil society organizations. And they have been doing it in the area of freshwater and sanitation with the support of Gates Foundation. She will talk about that. Then we will move to Dr. Vinya. Please raise your hand. Dr. Vinya leads a outstanding and a highly respected community movement in Sri Lanka. That movement, called Sarvodaya, covers more than 18,000 communities and community-based organizations, and has been working for more than 50 years. And in particular, it has done outstanding work in disaster response, risk reduction, and resilience by successfully engaging communities, and the number of community-based organizations they have formed and keep in the network engaged is a testament to how successful. So he will present what they have done and how that can offer some lessons to the ADB on how to meaningfully engage communities. Then we are fortunate to have Stefano. Please raise your hand. He is our host for the civil society program here. Yesterday, many of you may have seen him give a speech, if not at least raise his glass to greet all of us. And he has founded a NGO here, Pianata, which does outstanding work in the area of helping climate change adaptation and mitigation work. And he will talk about his experiences, his organization experiences, as well as he will provide reactions to the suggestions and comments from the other presenters. After these presentations by Ani, by Samira, by Dr. Vinya, and then comments from Stefano, we will have time for some questions from the participants here and online. And then it will be Director General Bruno and my job to try to highlight some of the takeaways and responses to close the session. So we have requested every participant, every panelist to limit to about 10 minutes in their program. And they all have a PowerPoint presentation, which you can follow. We will begin with Ani, and she will talk about what is stakeholder engagement, why it matters, why communities are stakeholders, and why it is important. Ani, over to you.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you all for being here, and I'm really honored to have the opportunity of speaking here from this stage about such an important topic, which is communities and ADB stakeholder engagement policy. First of all, let's start with a very important question, which is about the presentation part. Oh, okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, I shouldn't do. Oh, okay. Then next slide. This? Yeah, okay, they did. Okay. Thank you. Let's start with a key question. What is ADB stakeholder engagement policy? And slightly speak about what is objectives, and then other panelists will really dive into this question and speak about this more. This is a new policy that is a part of Asian Development Bank's environmental and social framework, and which will officially start in 2026 January and will replace 2009 Safeguard Policy. It brings stronger focus on community participation and focus on protecting people and the environment. It will manage risks better and engage people, local communities more in the policy-making processes and projects. One important part of this new policy is the Environmental and Social Standard 10, which is all about engaging with people and communities affected by the project. So, who are the stakeholders? Please, can we move the presentation? I don't know from where. This one? Oh, thank you. As I mentioned before, it will community participation will have more help to have more effective resource use, avoid conflict, and ensuring long-term success. Can I just move backward, please? Because okay, I will speak and then the presentation. So, who are stakeholders? Asian Development Bank talks about two main groups. First is people affected by the project. These are people who directly feel the effect of the projects. And the other people. The other people are those people who are interested in the projects. These include also civil society groups, local leaders, and development partners. So basically, we can say that everyone should be stakeholder, and as we know, everyone should be interested in development, everyone should be interested in sustainability, and in this case, one point is people affected by the project, those who directly feel the impact, and the others, interested people. Finding and listening to these stakeholders is the key of the process, because only in this way, only in finding people who really are affected by these projects and who really care about these projects can lead to success. So now the slide, why engage with communities? The local people know their land better than everyone else can know. We always speak about the problems globally, but everything starts from a local point. I myself am from a very small village called Ursador in Armenia, but I think no one from you know about this, but we have problems that no one else, even in my country, my other region, can understand. Sometimes when I tell someone from other city in Armenia that we have this problem in my small village, they can just be amazed. How you have this problem? Oh, how you have water only one day and you don't have water the other day? This emphasizes how important is it to engage local people in the processes. And also when people feel like they are important, when they feel that they are part of the project, they have more responsibility to act, and it helps them to keep this responsibility and act with other people. Good engagement also helps to make sure that the funds and everything else is separated like effectively and fairly, especially to groups who are sometimes felt out. This includes young people, women, marginalized groups, and other vulnerable groups. And finally, being open and respectful builds trust. When people feel heard and when they feel the trust, only in this case, the projects are stronger and more effective. And when we speak about the climate change especially, climate change affects everything and everyone. And when we include communities, we know that resources are used better and we can avoid the disagreement earlier. When we speak about communities, we should not just speak about them early or only at the beginning and the end of the process, but we should about them early and often and engage them in every aspect of the project. And only in this case, projects can last longer and work better. I saw this during my COP experience. As was mentioned before, I was part of COPs and COP28. I will mention COP28 in United Arab Emirates. And there I saw how community engagement can change things and how discussions on community voices can lead to better climate action. During the COP, the main message was that climate change is global, but the effects are local. As I mentioned, everything is global, but we never can speak about it from a global aspect. At COP28, community engagement took many forms. There were indigenous people, there were people from all the world, they were young people, they were vulnerable people. They were civil society group members, and they were not just observers. They didn't just observe, but they could raise their voice. They could describe what they feel. They could do it from every aspect, for professional, personal, even emotional. Sometimes when you just see how these people, for example, women, how they feel the fact of climate change, sometimes you can just cry. And this shows the effects of climate change. There were different pavilions in COP28, and unfortunately, sometimes finances are not enough to have pavilion. For example, when I went there in 2023, there was no Armenian pavilion, for example. But as everyone understands the importance of community, and as everyone understands how climate change works and how it affects, I could speak and I could raise my voice in every pavilion. And of course, there were people who understood your community problem, and there were people who for whom it was really familiar, and there were people who only knew that these kind of things can exist because of climate change. And to just wrap up, I want to say that stakeholder engagement is not just a rule, and it's a mindset. It's about inclusion, partnership, and respect. And communities are not just people who help, they are partners. Communities should always be partners, and they always should be stakeholders. When we truly center communities in our work, our projects become fairer, more creative, and more lasting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ani. And Samira, you are next.
So, this is how we use, right? Okay. Thank you, Vinay, and thank you, ADB, for this opportunity and platform. I feel that I don't need to explain how fundamental water, sanitation, and hygiene is for human health and well-being. And we have witnessed, like in globally, there has been tremendous strides in providing billions of people with water, sanitation, and proper hygiene practices, services. But despite this project, what I feel I need to share here is South Asia is still a home for more than 600 million people who still practices open defecation, and 134 million people still do not have access to improved drinking water, and 68 to 84% of water resources are contaminated in South Asia. And the most disadvantaged people because of this situation are the people living under the poverty line, earning just $2 a day. And they are the people who are socially, economically, and geographically and technically hard to reach people. So in response to this severe challenge of wars, a group of civil society organizations got together and formed a network called Freshwater Action Network South Asia in 2008. And since then, FANSA has been advocating through various campaigns and initiatives an inclusive, equitable, climate resilient WAS facilities and services for all in South Asia, by supporting civil society associated with this network to engage them meaningfully in the dialogue with decision makers and in dialogues for policy change for water to sanitation for all in South Asia. And we have currently 600 plus network members from 7 different countries like Pakistan, India, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Maldives. And unfortunately, Afghanistan is less active these days because of their current political situation. But I also must admit that not all of the network members are very active. So, and the regional secretariat of this network is now currently based in Nepal in the organization called Lumanti Support Support Group for Shelter. So basically, what we can say about us is FANSA is a network acting as a catalyst by bridging the gap between global watch agenda and community initiatives. And it also serves as a forum for learning and sharing, and their members come together to exchange their experiences, their strategies, and their best practices so that they can learn from each other and organize impactful collective actions. And it also serves as a platform for dialogue and influence, where it ensures that the community voices are represented. And while supporting the national government to achieve their development goals, FANSA do not act as a funding organization, but it is actually a facilitator to empower communities by collaboration and capacity building. So without going on the past, like what we did in the past, I'm going to talk about one of the components of the project that we are running at the moment currently, which engages community massively in the project. So the FANSA is currently leading a project called Rising for Rights, with a goal to strengthen the civil society organization to ensure that there is safely managed sanitation for all in South Asia by promoting a newly developed approach called citywide inclusive sanitation. And its strategies focuses around advocacy for policy action and strengthening accountability and strengthening institutional mechanism to empower communities and amplify their voices. And we work closely with communities who are marginalized and excluded. For example, informal settlers, sanitation workers, low-income community, and vulnerable women and children who are mostly impacted by the sanitation services in their area. And we collaborate with like-minded organizations, definitely with our network members and other like-minded civil society organizations, development partners. And we are also associated with global and international networks such as Sanitation and Water for All and Water Poverty, Butterfly Effect, and so on. So one of the strategies that this project has adopted is a community-driven participatory monitoring. And this allows community members to actively participate in monitoring the progress, performance, and quality of sanitation services. And this process puts the community members who are affected the most, mainly the local residents, at the center, and they play the critical role in identifying issues, tracking progresses, and provide feedback. And the engagement is facilitated through by forming a group, either working with already existed group in the community or forming a new group. The already existed groups are basically registered with the local authority, so they are considered as a part and a plan of government development processes. And for example, there are groups called Women Forum in Bangladesh, Sanitation Worker Group in Nepal, LGBTIQ Group in Nepal, monitoring centers in Sri Lanka, and CWISE Task Force in Pakistan. And they function by conducting regular meetings, surveys, and identifying the places to monitor and then observe the sanitation infrastructures. But they only do not monitor the infrastructures, but also are engaged, and they are provided with training that are required for the essential aspect of community driven participatory monitoring. such as community mobilization itself, waste sector monitoring, training, community-based participatory monitoring, and social audit, advocacy and influencing training. And some of the trainings are also technical. And to reach out the wider range, these trainings are again replicated in the local language after the concerned project coordinators are trained in these trainings. So the communities, when they go and monitor these services, they identify the problems that they have in those critical problems that they are facing in these services, such as insufficient access to sanitation facilities, inadequate waste collection, blockage in sewage system, unsafe sanitation system, unsafe environment, and lack of basic wash facilities, and even no public toilets. Such situations are observed, noted, and they are again shared with the local authorities and concerned stakeholders. And for example, the first picture here is a picture of a gathering which was televised. It is where the local authority, municipal mayor, and the president of the local community users committee, water and sanitation users committee, president was invited and invited other community members and sanitation workers, and these findings were discussed there. And this is where the sanitation group of Nepal shared their concerns about not having safety gears while at their work, insurance policy, and safe environment, and even public toilets in the workplace. And they also raised the concern of not being recognized as a dignified worker at their workplace. So these issues were raised and discussed over there, and not immediately, but in the course of time, a mandate was passed to ensure that there is a health insurance policy for the sanitation workers, and there is protective gears available all the time. So these are some of the examples here. And in Sri Lanka, these sort of findings were also shared through media to make the authority more accountable. And while meeting with several people in these last 3 days, I came across a gentleman who is not from civil society organization, but then said that, oh, you civil society organizing people, you glorify your work too much. You are too idealistic. You talk about, the things that you cannot, especially those advocacy projects like ours, where FANSA does exclusively advocacy initiatives. And he said that you always glorify your achievement. But these are some of the achievements that I say that you might not find it so big for you all, but for the communities that we work with, they are the changes that are brought by their own initiatives, and they are very proud of it. For example, the LGBTI community in Nepal, after their several interaction with the government authorities, they are able to secure a job in the government task force, a paid job. And Bhumia, she is the first trans woman in Hetauda that was employed by the municipality of Hetauda. And she's very proud of what she's doing at the moment. And sanitation workers, they feel now they are valued, and they are heard because the health insurance policies and they have received the health insurance policy, and they are always available with the protective gears. So similarly, in Bangladesh, through Women Forum, a public toilet in the Sri Mangal Railway, which is very important facilities for the commuters, mainly those community members, to go to their work every day. It was non-functional, but the Women Forum group, they raised these issues and went to the municipality and make it revamp the public toilet facilities. Similarly, in Mardan city of Pakistan, the CY Task Force Group was able to allocate 1 million Pakistan rupees separately for sanitation development initiatives from the government's planning development budget. A similar story is there about Kandy City in Sri Lanka, where the group, the monitoring center, monitored and raised the issues of the toilet, and where these public toilets were improved after their interaction with the local authorities. And not only wash issues, they use this platform, they take advantage of this platform to discuss other issues that are concerning to them. For example, gender-based violence issues are also raised and consulted and addressed. Livelihood issues were also addressed. And not their journey do not just end here, but they are also invited as several national and international and regional platforms to share their stories. And these are some of the pictures where community leaders share their stories. For example, the first one is from Pakistan. Her name is Gulnaz, who shared her initiatives and the stories at the World Urban Forum in Egypt. Whereas the middle one is the sanitation worker Deepak, who shared his story of this initiative at the South Asia Regional Wash Conclave. Similarly, the last picture is from Asia Pacific Urban Forum, where these informal settler, they belong to informal settler representative. They share their stories about their initiatives at these forums. So, in summary, participatory monitoring process is a collaborative process where not only community members are directly engaged, but other key stakeholders are also engaged to ensure that the sanitation services are there as per the needs of their needs of the community members, which also ensures the quality and the accountability of the services. So what we can learn from these initiatives is that when we involve community members in monitoring processes, they provide real-time data, grassroots data, because they are the ones who can identify problems, identify issues in the services. For example, if there is a they will have the knowledge of when there will be seasonal water shortages, where the public services, especially toilets, are flood prone, and those information can be shared to the project implementers, where they can divert their fundings and investments towards the place where the locally suitable relevant solutions can be identified, and they can invest their investment in such areas. Similarly, involving communities in monitoring increases transparency. If we engage them in monitoring process, they can also track the progress of the development, even identify some inefficiency or misuse of fund and report back to the concerned authorities, which can also save misuse of funding. And community generated data supports adaptive project management, because they will be well aware about their local issues, and this will make this will also ensures that they are the owners. They kind of they will have ownership if they are engaged, and the needs and the issues of children, women, and people with disabilities are integrated when they are involved, and that will help us to make the project gender responsive. Even it will also help us to govern the finance in the investment of these projects. And lastly, what I would say is they are the ones who are able to provide data that will bridge the gap between the reality and the policy level understanding and the decisions. So when they are there to provide informations and data, they can be used as a source of information, so that the projects information and whatever the initiatives they are taking, they sometimes might not be able to implement or translate into real action because of the lack of the funding. So this is where project implementers can come in and support the communities to make their initiatives come true. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samira. We talked about making people's lives better as the objective. And here is a powerful example of how the work being done under this project is making the lives of one of the most vulnerable and marginalized group of people, sanitation workers. Many of us take them for granted. They are invisible, but they make our lives better. And here is a powerful example of how community engagement can make their life better, and they will be directly affected by the climate change operations. So thank you for presenting that powerful example. And from one powerful example to do even better, we now have a powerful example from Sri Lanka. May I invite in Vinya, please share it with us. Dr. Vinya.
Thank you. Thank you, Vinay, and thank you, ADB, for inviting me to share the experience of the Sarvodaya movement. And I'm going to use one example, that is our community-based response to disasters. And then within the larger framework, trying to link how we empower communities to face climate change. So Sarvodaya is a grassroots development organization which has been in the forefront of climate adaptation and disaster management and disaster resilience in Sri Lanka. And Sri Lanka is identified as one of the countries which is in the list of high-risk countries for climate impact. And we really needed to act very fast and very in an effective way. And we have tried during the last 15 years since the experience that we have had of the tsunami, and try to build the capacity, community capacity, and the capacity of our own organization, which is the largest civil society organization in Sri Lanka. So the movement itself was founded in the late 1950s, and we have a network of community-based organizations, and we have over the years, over a period of 66 years, reached about 15,000 communities. And we have been involved in disaster response work, though it's not directly linked to climate change at that time. And that was a very good entry point for us to sensitize and also develop our own capacity, and also the capacity of communities to respond to climate change. So basically, in this program, which is of course not supported by the ADB, there are other development partners, and we were really trying to systematically introduce systems to the network of village-based organizations that we were supporting. Now, these are community-based organizations where you have youth involvement in various aspects related to community development. They may be health, they may be volunteers who are trying to improve the community health. They may be also working as volunteers for peace building and reconciliation in Sri Lanka, because we have had a man-made disaster, human-induced disaster for 26 years in Sri Lanka. And we were recovering from that disaster when we are also having to face natural disasters. So we wanted to train community leaders and first responders. As we all know, first responders are very important until the others come and try to help the community. So then also try to introduce this concept of rescue teams, and also how we can develop the ability of the grassroots communities in delivering emergency assistance in a planned way. How different disaster risks are managed, because though we are a small country, we have faced situations where on one part of the country we face severe drought. In another part of the country, we get flooding. We have never seen such contrasting impacts due to weather changes. And we have to localize our response also, identify the local risks which are very specific to that particular geographic and climatic area. And also create a second layer of emergency response teams, because we have seen from 2016 a rapid increase in the frequency of flooding in Sri Lanka. So basically, we have adopted, even during the time of the war, a 5R approach, that is emergency relief, that is to respond to the emergency immediate needs of communities, then try to assist the communities in recovering from the immediate impact of whatever the disaster, which we call rehabilitation. Then reconstruction is really rebuilding the lost infrastructure, homes, schools, and preschools, and so on. And then also the healing process, whether it is a natural disaster or a man-made disaster. Of course, there's trauma. How to have programs to heal. Then finally, they should be in a path of sustainable development, which we call reawakening. So our movement's name is Sarvodaya, which is a Sanskrit word coined by Mahatma Gandhi, Sarva Udaya, awakening of all. And Shramadhan is sharing. So awakening of all through sharing, and volunteerism is at the heart of our work. So disaster risk reduction, this approach is implemented at community level, but we have 25 districts in Sri Lanka. So in each district, we have trained district teams who are also partnering with different government and other non-governmental organizations, which are also supporting a network of villages. Now, this concept of community-based organizations, which have been also referred to in earlier presentations as well, this is little different in the sense that these CBOs are registered under the Societies Ordinance of Sri Lanka. They are legal entities. They can own assets. They can have bank accounts. They have an elected membership, officials through a membership. And this is revolutionary, because in our present session this morning, there was it was on infrastructure building, community infrastructure building, even large projects. There was a concept of community ownership. Community ownership, not just in the decision making, but also whether they can have shareholding. They call the term discounted shareholding by CBOs. So these are revolutionary concepts. So we have registered more than 5,000 community-based organizations, not all of which are, active in the optimum level that we expect, but they are a network, strong network, which are managing social programs, economic programs, and creating economic opportunities, particularly for young people. So we were introducing through a network of these young trained volunteers this concept of disaster risk reduction. And then the key activities included, they were actually functioning like professional groups, because these young people, if they are given very focused, specific training, they can do CPR, do other things which are very relevant. And they were also engaged during the last 5 years in various disaster situations, and they were given the knowledge, skills, and other equipment. And we also have centers set up even at village level, whether with the basic life-saving equipment and whatever the material they need to face a emergency situation. Then early warning systems have also been tested. Of course, we as a CSO, we can't issue any warning. We can only relay to the last mile whatever the official announcements or alerts that have been released. But that itself, the last mile is so important, and we have strengthened the last mile through the network of these volunteers and the networks. And also, it is not just about saving lives or responding to emergencies, but also looking at what is sustainable development. Why did this disaster happen? Why was this impact, this particular disaster's impact, so bad in our village? Why was it not so bad in another village? So critical thinking and dialogue is so important. And then also linking with other sectors and developing partnerships. And partnerships have also been referred earlier in other presentations as well. So it's a approach where we try to link to technical organizations, including the United Nations system, then the government's own National Disaster Management Center, Ministry of Health, Meteorological Department is the only agency authorized to release alerts and also weather predictions, in National Building Research Organization, because right now we are also not sure of whether certain buildings will stand certain disasters. So they have to do assessments beforehand, including schools, including community structures. So we are helping in that process as well. Then the other organizations which are much more specialized than our organization in certain areas like medical relief, Sri Lanka Red Cross, St. John Ambulance Service, then also research and technical organizations, because the knowledge needs to be updated. We also have indigenous community knowledge. We try to capture that indigenous community knowledge also, how they can also foresee some of the disasters coming, the predictions, these prediction systems are there. So we encourage even these young people who are in universities to look at the practices in their own villages and try to link with the technical knowledge that they gain through our movements training. So the results have been that we have a skilled volunteer force around the country. Of course, they will be, there'll be attrition because some of these young people, particularly in Sri Lanka, they want to go out of the country, so we lose. But then at least the period that they are in the community, they will continue to serve. And then also they train the next layers, and they also help in non-disaster situations as well. So we know that well-informed, disaster-resilient communities are important. About 600 out of the thousands of villages we are working, at least we have succeeded in forming such committees and have that skill imparted to the volunteer groups in those villages. And also large numbers have been trained as master trainers who continue to train with minimum cost. So although this is initially a funded project, the funding stopped, particularly after the USAID, the Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance, stopped funding to Sri Lanka. We had to still continue because the need is there. We should not be totally dependent on donor funding. So with these volunteers, because they are volunteers, they are continuing, but you need a support system. That support system we give as a national organization with some endowments that we have, not very big, but trying to somehow sustain a basal level of activities that can continue to remind people that there is action needed at community level, individual action, community, household level action, and that is working. So finally, we also assist in rebuilding homes and sanitation facilities and livelihood resources and incorporating eco-friendly and disaster resilient designs. And also with regard to climate adaptation and environmental conservation, we promote climate resilient agriculture, organic farming, and sustainable irrigation, drip irrigation systems, and other appropriate technologies that can really save the environment. And also we help in reforestation work and also renewable energy adoption. We have pioneered actually introducing solar technology in the 1980s. And then finally, we need also centers outside the government also as civil society centers where this knowledge can be imparted, and those centers need to be equipped. So about 100 people can be housed in an emergency situation. So we are encouraging these centers to be also set up. So in conclusion, through a holistic people-centered approach implemented over the years, Sarvodaya continues to build climate resilient communities by enhancing disaster response and risk reduction skills and programs. And we ensure that the Sri Lankan communities are better prepared for future disasters while promoting sustainable development by leveraging local knowledge, mobilizing volunteers, and collaborating with national and international partners. So the lessons learned are very similar to what has been presented by Amy and also from Samira from Nepal. And some of these lessons I will not repeat because we collectively coordinated the presentation. So it's not just the community ownership, but equipping them with the knowledge and skills and also assets that can, in the short term, face whatever the disasters that they are faced with, but in the long term, promote sustainable development and climate resiliency. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vinya, and thank you, first of all, to Sarvodaya movement for serving the communities throughout Sri Lanka for more than 50 years. I think this is a humongous, huge effort and very much making a difference in the lives of people. As you were talking and presenting the 5R approach, the thought crossed my mind that this approach can equally well apply to what the climate change is impacting on communities' lives locally, as Ani has pointed out, that while the climate change is global, the impact is all local. And I'm sure these communities where you are present have this. It is also outstanding to know that how you have created and sustained a volunteer core of people who are ready to be mobilized at a moment's notice and actually keep engaged despite the attrition you referred to. And finally, to me, it was most impressive that the communities themselves are showing resilience by having the knowledge, the assets, and the support from your emergency and other operation centers to be able to engage in taking care of themselves and supplement whatever others. So they're not entirely dependent on somebody to come and help them out. I think these are very important lessons for the Asian Development Bank and any other supporter of climate adaptation and mitigation programs. Thank you for sharing with that. And I think with that, it's my pleasure to invite Stefano to share with us about his organization work as well as his reflections on the presentations by Dr. Vinya as well as Samira. Over to you, Stefano.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm really impressed about the presentation for the incredible work you're doing. I will follow. I have a presentation here. I will follow a bit and present our organization here in Italy, and then trying to give you a brief insight on the presentation and from our perspective here in Italy and Europe. I'm speaking also in terms of European Climate Pact as EU Climate Pact ambassador. So, and it's a pleasure for me to be here again. So next, please. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, so just a brief presentation. So we are a non-profit organization called Pianeta, based in Italy, in Modena, Bologna, and Roma. We have small teams of young people and people working in different professional sectors. Our mission is inspiring change and climate change awareness. And next slide, please. Our values, they are, sorry. Okay. Yes. Okay, wonderful. Our values are just a protection of the environment, rights and inclusivity, justice, participation and democracy. We are very connected in social and climate justice. So we think the connection between social crisis and the climate crisis is very strong. So, and we fight for participation and for democracy. Also in Italy and Europe is very important in this moment. And actually we are working on 3 pillars in our activity. So awareness. So we organize conference, seminars, public talks, concerts, works, exhibitions, and other events to highlight the deep connection between the environmental crisis and the social inequalities. So the goal is to inform people, inspire them and mobilize them, keep them active, and this is awareness. Then the second pillar is labs and activities, so concrete actions, in particular with young people and adolescents and children. For example, school workshop on bike maintenance and sustainable mobility, or social sewing labs to explore the value of sustainable fashion, but also recycling workshop and educational programs. We work in school and after schools, and also participatory process to, for example, redesign in our city a urban lake, so public spaces together with their community. So engagement, participation. Then last but not least, advocacy and engagement. That means, for example, to take so we are a non-profit organization, politically not aligned, independent, but we have values and ideas, and we want them to keep in the policy arena. And so, for example, one volunteer last year was elected in the municipality, keeping on the values and the battles we are doing at local level. So just because a concrete case, and then I come to the insights. We had floods in Emilia-Romagna here in Italy 2 years ago, very, very strong flooding involving thousands of people. And we, for this reason, we just decided to, as mediating organizations, to involve people in reflecting about water system. And what we did, some easy things like redevelop a lake in urban areas to understand the values of water, walking seminars on water and biodiversity, documentaries and cinema on water resources. This was a way to involve people and to understand how it is important, our connection with water and hydric resources. And so, okay, see, now this is an example also on how the video, on how we use also social network. You can put the video on. We use a lot of social media to involve people. If it's working, that's way to get to involved, in our events. Putting together people in an easy way, like also concerts, and with the possibility to share more engagement, and then making them reflect and on the way in debates, and so this is an example. Thank you. And okay, so the insights about the presentation and some perspective, because I've seen lots of similarity in the work you are doing in a completely different setting with what we are doing here in Italy and at European level. What is important for me, I think, 3 things in particular. Measure the social impact is very important for the stakeholder, in particular for private sector, for international organization, and for the governments. It's very important to measure the social impact with key indicators that can be built together with the community. Second point I wanted to highlight is the fact that our beneficiaries are often the most vulnerable people. and the people that cannot be helped without other that assistance and competence and skills. And this means, for example, that we need to be financed in some way. It's different than to be in the free market, you know, as a company. We need skills. Often we and you have skills, competence, capacity, but you and we all together, we must in some way showcase the impact is really important, because the cost of inaction is higher than the action, you know. So what we are trying to do also in Europe is in some way putting together three different sectors that are the politicians, the policy, the academy, the science, the open science, and the third sector in a way that we call, and I come back to the slides, in a way that we call the new production of public policies, in a way that is transdisciplinary. So we put together from one side, for example, the scientific evidence, the social studies, the technology, the social and environmental impact. From the other side, the public participation that in particular organizations like ours can do in youth involvement, in ambassadors program, in citizen assemblies and engagement, and then the climate and social policies in terms of national and international policies, industrial investment, banks, international organizations. So the idea is to engage people with new way of engagement in Europe, for example, like with the concert or with the path, with the seminar, walking seminars, and put together all those organizations to reflect together and to give capacity to the organization, to give competence, and to put the organization together with the expert that can build the network, that can build also that can have the expertise. So I think these are the principles that we can share, and it's very interesting for me, this exchange of views. I think we will need to follow, to exchange our way of work in an era, in particular in Europe, of growing misinformation, also of growing battle against democracy. So this is really what I wanted to share, and thank you very much again for the possibility, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefano. And I think the framework for transdisciplinary co-production that you have presented is really worthy of much more thinking and reflection. And I think that's something I highlight for taking away from this, because it can help connect various threads of public participation, policy making, and the science. So thank you for that. I think I will, while we are at in the sharing of thoughts mode and experiences, I would like to go next to DG Carrasco to share with us his reflections on what he has heard, as well as going back to my introductory point that ADB goal is to make lives better, and the two key policies which have an impact on putting people in the center of development have just been updated by the ADB. So drawing on that and the presentations, we would all love to hear reflections by DG here. Over to you, Bruno.
Good afternoon, and I'm very pleased to see, despite the late hour, that there's still some dedicated participants. I want to begin by thanking Vinay for inviting me to this panel. Vinay has been a true mentor over the years, and we've been all inspired by a lot of his work. So thank you very much, Vinay. I wanted also to thank the excellent presentations made by my co-panelists. Annie, Samina, Dr. Vinya, Stefano, you've made great presentations, and all of them have been very, very impactful in many different ways. I certainly am inspired by listening to you, as I've been in many other instances in my participation with civil society. And I'll certainly come back to these some remarks on your excellent presentations. Before I do that, I wanted to first of all acknowledge some of the participants. We have a former country director for Sri Lanka, Richard Vokes, who's with us. He was a former colleague at ADB and also has been very inspirational in many areas. We've got John Versanthford, who heads the Anti-Corruption and Integrity Department at ADB. We've got many other colleagues. I want to also acknowledge Chris Morris, who used to head the NGOC prior to Heidi coming in, and he's also been a source of inspiration. He did a lot of work with youth engagement, which I'll come back to. I think there are a few others. If I've missed you, I apologize. It's a bit hard to see with these lights glaring in our eyes. So before I come to the kind of the review, I just wanted to put a little bit of context of the importance of civil society engagement. I don't know if you know this, but we hold and host many seminars over the course of these 3-4 days as part of the annual general meetings. And we have the biggest program is with civil society. We have 7 seminars that we host over the few days that we're here, including the last meeting with the presence of our president. So I think that's a very strong commitment to civil society, and we're pleased to continue doing this work because we learn a lot and we're inspired by your work. I wanted to say that in terms of the work that we've been doing, 2 important programs, or rather policies, operational approaches that we've recently approved, and another example that I wanted to highlight on community development participation. So the first one has to do with the the civil society operational approach that I think many of you have already seen and heard. That was very, very important work for what we do. We are effectively realizing and recognizing that the better we are able to work closely with civil society, the better the development impact across many of our investments, and hopefully across all those investments. We have, as part of our strategy review, last year we did the midterm review of Strategy 2030, our long-term strategy. We're now branding ourselves as the bank that resolves complex challenges together. So that together is certainly bringing out the inclusivity of the work, including inclusion with civil society. In that midterm review, we have identified 5 areas so that all of you are a little bit more aware of what we're doing. So the first one is the climate program, the climate work, which we're very strongly committed and dedicated to. The second one is private sector development. The third one is really about regional cooperation and integration, a hallmark of ADB's work, as well as part of that, regional public goods. The fourth is the digital transformation, which again is increasingly of greater importance to do our development impact work. And then the fifth one is resilience and empowerment, which brings in matters considering gender, including social protection, and some of our social sector work. So what we realize is to be able to have greater impact across all those major areas, we need to engage meaningfully across the civic society space. The civil society operational approach is really a roadmap that shows us what we need to do to be better able to engage. We have milestones across time and with dedicated responsible departments, offices to make sure that that happens and that implementation is taken so much more seriously than what in many instances has been the case. In terms of that civil society operational approach, we focus really on three components. One is more about the engagement itself, and Vinay was the one who brought out a lot of the meaningful engagement as opposed to a more traditional, even passive engagement. And we appreciated that. And part of the work that went into this civil society operational approach originated with some of the good groundwork that Vinay did. So we're very appreciative of that. The second one is really about bringing in greater knowledge management and working with civil society to bring out that knowledge. And that's very important also to, in some ways, design better projects, bringing in that knowledge. And the third component really was about greater transparency, greater disclosure in the work that we have to do. So it's been very impressive. Moving on to the second important policy was the ESF, the Environment Social Framework. Many of you may have heard my colleague Bruce Dunn present earlier. That has been a tremendous work, and the work has spanned over 4 years. It's probably been one of the most challenging and complex of policies that we have put together. And as you know, with MDBs, we kind of work on the basis of building from what other MDBs have done. So the expectation is always we build from the last one. So that puts a further challenge on the work that we did. But just to say that a large part of that work involved consultations and more consultations, and civil society was essential for us to learn, for us to hear their feedback, how we do that and how do we do it more effectively. I think also a very important point to mention is that we have, I believe it's some 12 standards under the ESF, and one of them is unique to, in some ways, engagement with civil society. So that's been, again, a very strong recognition of the importance of that work. So very, very pleased to see that. I think I wanted to bring out one program because we've seen the importance of community development work. Samina, you brought that out, and many of you also did. So we do have a very important flagship program called the Community Development Resilience Partnership Program, CDRP. That has brought in a lot of interest from many of our donors and others. FCDO is part of that work. The French AFD is part of that work. And that is taking a little bit the inspiration of what many of you have presented, which is looking at more of a bottom-up approach, that looks at the idea. I think that, Samina, you mentioned the subsidiarity principle. So local actors know best what's needed for them, as opposed to an institution like ours telling them what has to be done, or even a central government telling them how to do it or what has to be done. So we've been inspired by that work. It's been bringing in a lot of good change, grassroots involvement, and definitely the important thing here is building resilience at the community level. So making sure that whether it's a small-scale infrastructure, it is meaningful for that community. It serves a purpose. So that's been very exciting. We brought in a resilience gender lens to most of that work, and we're certainly getting out a lot of exciting ideas. We did, there's a number of sub-projects under that. Last year we did the Lao PDR resilience initiative, which was looking at bringing more recognition of the importance of building what you're referring to, the kind of disaster risk management approach at the community level, to be more aware and to be able to adapt quicker to sudden threats. I'm going to just basically say, in terms of the comments to some of the exciting work that all of you have presented. First, again, to say that it's very inspiring, and I always learn from listening to you and to civil society in general. I think Ami We certainly recognize that it is very important to work again with that subsidiarity principle. We certainly recognize that we need to work more closely with the principles of inclusion, partnership, and respect, and that I think is extremely important. We do recognize the importance of local leaders that you mentioned, and if we do that well, we get obviously better development outcomes. Samira, WASH is so important. We have our urban group, urban resilience teams that work, as you probably know, in the space, in the WASH area, in the WASH space. Certainly a very important point, and to Vinay's point, that is some of the hardest work that has to be done. So we have to recognize that. I also like the point that you mentioned of the role of civil society in terms of monitoring for results, having more of that participatory approach. At the Asian Development Bank, we're trying to bring out much more of impact, development impact of our work, and making sure that civil society and others are there able to measure and monitor and report on that. That's a very important element of checks and balances also, so we appreciate that. Dr. Vinya, very impressive, the Sarvodanya program. Disaster resilience is affecting disasters are affecting all of us across Asia Pacific. Very difficult times when we see the impact of those floods, of the typhoons that we have in the Philippines, and the destruction that brings about. We need to have certainly much more awareness in terms of the communities, how they can be the first responders in many instances instead of waiting for the government to come in. And I really enjoyed the 5 R's that you presented. Again, we're very much inspired about a lot of the points that you brought out. Youth engagement, again, is something that I've talked to Heidi a number of times, and obviously we want to do more of that. We definitely would like to also build up a little bit more of the master's trainers programs that you mentioned. I think overall we see the incredible and impressive results that we can do if we're more inclusive, if we're listening more to many of the stakeholders, including, of course, civil society. Maybe just before I end, I wanted to again take this opportunity to thank Heidi, Roselle, and many others that put together this operational approach. So thank you so much. So with that, I'll pass it back to Vina. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, I think just to remind, what are we doing here? I think this whole program is learning with partners. What we have here is a lot of learning activity, where we are learning from the experience and the actual results on the ground, practical things and the purpose of all of this learning is to make people's lives better. And that is the shared goal that everyone on this panel and in this room shares. So I think thank you all for being part of it, and thank you for your patience. So we do have time for a couple of questions before we close. So please go ahead. I think I see one hand over here. Someone can get a mic. Why don't you come here? There is a mic over here. So yeah, right in front here. Okay. All right, there is a mic. Now you have 2 mics. So
hello.
Yes.
I am Arman from Armenia, Armavir Development Center NGO. First of all, it's really nice to have Ani, Voice of Youth, in the panel from Armenia. Thank you for your presentation. And in fact, it relates really to the core of our values of participation. I guess a question maybe to ADB is, do you look at your good practices? Because we actually have really good practices with ADB in terms of participatory monitoring of school constructions back in 2017 and 18, and also COVID-19 mitigation program. And I think ADB was a forefront here in international organizations that directly worked with community-based organizations and gave us opportunity to directly work with international organizations where we really transformed development and crisis mitigation on local level using participatory means. And in fact, we also learned so much in that process, and it was so effective. So I guess just maybe a rhetoric question. Do you look at the good practices because it is really commendable work and the success we see, how our monitors became decision makers now, and how, you know, the local level approaches and a lot of aspects that were discussed in the panel, like disaster risk management on the local level, we realized that after COVID-19, our municipalities, they were working on, they were addressing animal pandemics, but there was no human pandemics in the disaster risk plans. And during this COVID support program, we helped them to also think about human health issues. Yeah, and so much great work has been done, and it was a great partnership. And in fact, it's just another thought to also remember and just note I just wanted to add. And thank you, Annie.
Thank you very much. And a very good question. I think it is not only learning with partners, but learning within the ADB's very, very broad and diverse portfolio. Any other question? Okay, I think there is one hand over here. Yeah. Yes. Please introduce yourself and yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much to everyone. Andy Symington, I'm in KPMG's Social Impact and Just Transition lead. I just had a question for you, Stefano, because I think it's a critical point that you make, that when we're developing indicators to measure social impact, that we need to involve community in creating those indicators. But I suppose what I see a lot of is that the indicators aren't quite measuring impact, they're measuring process. So I just wondered if you had a good example of where that kind of co-development of indicators has worked.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I think in the given the time limit, what I would do is ask first of all DG Bruno if he would respond to the question, and then Stefano, and then we'll go around the panel to see if people want to make any closing remarks, and then maybe I will say a few words to close the session.
Thank you. So I appreciate that first question. Yes, we certainly try to learn from our experiences, good and bad. We certainly do a lot of what we call the review of projects upon completion. We have what we refer to as technical completion reports, TCRs, for technical assistance projects. We have project completion reports for investment projects. I think that over the time I've been at ADB, there have been major disasters, and whether it was the 2004 tsunami, which hit very, very hard across South Asia and other areas, the Nepal earthquake some years ago, Typhoon Yolanda, Haiyan in the Philippines, and of course, many of the others that we've seen. There's always been a very, very inspiring involvement from local communities that are first affected, and that ability to organize themselves makes so much importance. It makes a lot of difference to be able to have that first respondents coming in from in some ways, the grassroots. And I remember, for example, the Nepal earthquake, we did a lot of efforts in terms of school reconstruction, making sure that they were more earthquake resistant. Similarly with Typhoon Yolanda, it took some time before things started moving in terms of the relief. The NGOs were fantastic in terms of some major initiatives that they took on their own. So this work, I think that Dr. Vinya was saying, it makes such a big difference. We know in COVID also many of the subnational governments that were organized and had systems in place, they were much less affected. So the organization capacity, that organizational capital, which along the lines of what was discussed, is often presented as part of the benefits of having that civil society in place, was essential. So let me maybe pause there, and then we'll pass the next question to.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So thank you for the question. That's not an easy one answer. But for example, I think to the children's poverty rate that at European level and also national level in Italy is used for European social funds. And when you go to see at the local level these indicators and how the local level can work on that indicators, the gap is incredible. So, for example, children's poverty rate in Europe has different indicators. One is how many times a month children eat meat, but at the local level they don't have the capacity to reach these indicators. They have completely different view on the poverty. So this is the challenge. It's not easy, but engaging local actors is really fundamental. If you don't do it, you cannot have indicators that really can show how the situation of poverty in that case is. So it depends on. In Sicily, for example, we have a different capacity at local level, local governance, than in the northern Italy, as you know, probably. So the situation is very different. So you have to engage local actors, local community, local governance, also in thinking how to create indicators, indicators. So.
Yes. One last point I wanted to mention, I've recognized many people. I forgot to recognize Ben, who is our director of fragility and conflict affected countries. And he is very much also the director of this NGOC. So working very closely with Heidi and Roselle as the head of the NGOC. Very, very appreciative of all the work that you've done. So thank you, Ben.
Samira, you can take that microphone.
What I would like to say is for the development investors, and it's really glad. I mean, it's very good to know about how you have dedicated programs for involving and engaging with civil society organizations and communities. So what I would reiterate and urge is that whenever there is a development project that you are planning to invest on, keep continuing consulting with the civil society organization, and please make it mandatory for the project implementers to bring them on the board and institutionalize their engagement, as well as whenever there's if you have any plans to invest in the bigger projects, please consider the aspects of water, sanitation, and hygiene, and housing of the community. That's all. Thank you.
What I want to say is, first of all, thank you all. Thank you all for being here, and thank you all for being interested in these topics. And I hope to see in civil society programs more young people during after this, because when I'm here, sometimes I'm just looking around and I wonder, am I in the right place? And I understand that I am in the right place, but maybe more young people should be here. And I want to thank Mr. Vinay for bringing me here, for the invitation, and maybe this panel and discussion with you gave me hope that one day everything will be all right and every problem we will have solution. Thank you.
I'll directly respond to that specific question on what indicators. I think each project, whatever the intervention will have impact, positive as well as negative, depending on the nature of the project and the community. Now, here, of course, there is a standard procedure before ADB or any development partner implements a project. There's an assessment. How seriously that environmental impact assessment, EIA, for example, how seriously it's done, how seriously the community is really consulted, how representative is that consultative process. There have been questions on that. So only if that is done seriously, that you will come up with specific correct indicators. I'll just give one example. Now we are talking about digitization. In certain villages in Sri Lanka, they were welcoming these towers, digital, mobile transmission towers. Now, on one hand, people welcome that, But they didn't realize now this one particular village which we are working, the livelihood also depended on beekeeping. The moment the tower was done, within weeks, the families were having this beekeeping. That was not an impact. I mean, no one would have anticipated that. But the science has that evidence. When you put up a tower, the beekeeping cannot happen. So what's the alternative livelihood for these people? Now, these are things that I think you need to really focus on a very specific project-based basis. So I think it's challenging, but it has to be done. There's no other alternative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it is my job now to bring this session to a close. I think the objective of this session was to acknowledge that the Asian Development Bank has policies to put people at the center of development, and it is doing a job, and it can do a better job by learning from the experience of partners. And we had three case studies presented here by Samira, Venya, as well as Stefano. So there is a lot that can be better. So if I had to close by saying to ADB that there are 2 or 3 things that they should pay attention to in terms of doing better in community engagement, the top of the things which come to my mind is, one is invest in building the knowledge and capacity of the communities, because that can pay hugely. So please find ways to do that. Second, support independent monitoring by the community. The money for that cannot come through the government. ADB provides money to government, but the government should not give the money to civil society to monitor the government. So you have to find some other way of supporting the community monitoring. The third is constructive engagement is extremely important, as highlighted by Samira as well as Vinya. The communities did not only the monitoring, but they engaged in a dialogue and constructive solution finding with the public authorities. And I think it can be done, as these case studies have shown. So that supporting that process is important. And finally, to say that the digital in this session as well as others, the power of the digital transformation helping the community participation is huge. And then during this excellent civil society program, there were a number of sessions, and the takeaway from that was that digital literacy is one of the things in which one needs to invest at community level. I think example was cited how the very simple thing, how to use a mouse, when trying to access digital means is something very basic, which needs to be not taken for granted. So it is important to do digital literacy. And let me close by, first of all, thanking all the panelists for their brilliant presentations. You did a great job. You shared a lot, which will be very meaningful for the ADB. And secondly, thank the organizers at the ADB for giving us this opportunity. That starts with the civil society team, Roselle, Heidi, Ben, and DJ Bruno, who leads this. And this team is a real champion of civil society engagement and community participation inside the ADB, and they're doing excellent work, which we should participate in and support. So we look forward. And I should say that this session will do something unusual, which is that we all panelists have worked to prepare a draft working paper, not only on these presentations. And this paper will be, following the discussion today, we have committed to finalize it, and we would discuss with ADB and see whether that can be published as a working paper knowledge product for other people to use. And perhaps we can have follow-up online events to to share that paper and to continue this dialogue and add many more examples from other partners. So with that, thank you all for staying up to this late hour, and thank you for your interest and support. Thank you.